is Steffanie Samuels, or Steph, and this is my show based on, well, first of all, I'm an environmental artist. So what that means is I do work based on climate change. And when there is something pertinent that is happening, I will react to the situation and do a painting on it. For example, it's not in here, but there was one I had done a couple years ago about a train accident in Ohio, and it leaked all this terrible chemical gas. So I did a big painting, and it was the gas that was being released, and it was just, you know, so the pieces are abstract, but if you read the titles of my work, they'll explain a bit what I'm thinking behind it. And because I still believe art can be beautiful, but have a message. And the message I want to convey is that do your part. This is happening, and we can all do something to help the planet, even if it's as little as recycling a water bottle or stopping a water bottle. Start using, you know, glasses and holders and what have you. Plastic straws, they kill me. I can't stand them because they get caught in turtles' noses and whales, and, you know, the fishing industry has a long ways to go because they capture anything in their giant nets while trawling. And it's endangering so many species now, as is the toxicity of the oceans. So, you know, we don't have that much time, and he who shall not be named in office, everything's being cut. So when I first heard that, like my heart sank because I sort of questioned what I was doing. Why am I doing this now? If everything's being cut, what is the point? And then I had to answer that to myself and say, because it's meaningful, it's still what I believe in, and even if I can get word of mouth out to whoever, it will be, again, something of importance. So it gave me that energy to go back into the studio and start again, even knowing what's happening around the world with us. Anyway, Cheryl Moss was kind enough to invite me to show in the gallery, and just so honored to be here. And this was a body of work I produced on the island, plus when I came back from the island, work that was either happening in the moment, articles I read about, or my impressions from the island, things I remembered. So I was in the Canary Islands in Archipelago, and I was on what's called La Gomera. There's a book out there that I've been you can pass around to see one of the major national parks on the island. And it's a UNESCO designated park because it's the oldest old growth park of Laura silver trees, which are the most magnificent trees I've ever seen. They're all full of moss, and they wrap around each other like lovers, or they look like little munchkins in the forest. I've never seen anything like this. It was so absolutely stunning. That's what got me to go to this residency. And so I was looking at a whole bunch of residencies because I knew I wanted to do one. And this one just caught my eye, and it just, so I wrote in asking about climate change, writing a grant, just saying, you know, I'd like to study your islands, study climate change, and then do work based on what I find there. And it's a low population island. The whole island is UNESCO designated. But this Laura Silver Park is a biosphere, which means it creates its own atmosphere. So it can make itself rain, It can make itself, has storms, it produces its own weather. So one day we were hiking and it decides to pour. Next day we were hiking, it's sunny. And it's very steep. The entire island is made of volcanic rock, and it's very steep. It's, as I said, the oldest the oldest island, but the second smallest island. And they have been greatly affected by climate change. They are in a drought and have been for 2 years. They have, even going back to the days of colonialism, they've taken over by Spain, and the tomatoes which they relied on heavily can't grow in this climate now. So they've been left without produce to develop. They do grow bananas, but it's really devastated the growing industry. And the same goes for the fishing industry. And the fishing industry is because the ocean is getting too toxic. And to think about that, that there are some local fish that they do fish, and it's delicious, but the major fishing industry has stopped, and it's because of the chemicals in the water, the fats and all the rest. So it's not a wealthy island, but wherever you go, it says to recycle, recycle, recycle. Use water sparingly. And that, to me, I thought was wonderful that there's this whole community project and movement to make sure that the island survives, and because it's starting to crumble. The cliffs themselves are starting to have rock slides. And so every day a group of people go out and clear the roads from whatever fell down the night before. And you just hope as you're driving through that nothing's going to fall on you. But there's netting. And a lot of places have netting up the sides of the road so that if something falls, it's not going to hit the car. And the residency itself was just wonderful. You have to be very independent. There's no one there saying, you're going to give a talk, you're going to da-da-da-da. And there's no, I had a schedule where I would work in the studio every other day for hours. And then at the other day, I would go touring. And it was, snorkeling and hiking and seeing the little villages, and the roads are like this, just like this, and so small, but they're well maintained. And that was the main thing. I actually took videos of my husband's hands in the road as he's driving these curves, and we have a stick shift. And so it's like, I don't think we made it past second gear ever. But it's, and you can't see what's coming around the bend. So it was actually frightening but fun. And while we were there, we had our own little cottage villa, gazebo. And we were very lucky because it was the two of us, and it was just our own little sweet home with a little kitchen, but we ate our main meals with the other artists and the person who overlooks the resident home. And so the first 2 weeks, I was there a month, and the first 2 weeks there were two Irish women who were both watercolorists, and one did also work on the computer, and they were just lovely. But they sort of stuck to themselves mainly, although we all ate together and prepared meals. But the second two artists that came after them, one was an American writer, very well known and published. She's a professor at a university in West Virginia, or in Virginia. And I came home and immediately ordered one of her books, you know, because I thought she was so talented. And the other one was from Portugal, and she was this young woman, just so adorable. And she was a photographer and mixed media artist. And she spoke pretty good English, and we just, the four of us just really glommed on, and we just went places together. It was so much fun. And we've kept in touch, so which is really nice. Thank God for WhatsApp, you know. And so the trip itself was just amazing. And where we stayed, at the front porch, where we ate all our meals, overlooked the ocean. And there was a koi pond right in front, and the ocean and the sunset. Oh my God, I saw a rainbow in front end. Who sees this anymore, right? We don't have the skies to hold it anymore. And the stars at night, it was just amazing. And our place, you had to walk a little bit dangerous path, I'd say, because the trade winds were happening when we first got there. And these winds blow in at such a rate that my husband would pull me because he was afraid I'd fall away. And there was no, here's our porch patio, and then it's nothing. And there was nothing to stop. There was no guardrail or anything. So, you know, and my hat would be flying off. It was something else. They eventually did die down a little bit, but it was just so amazing to feel these winds pushing you. A lot of palm trees. Their main export is palm tree honey. And what they do for this, let's say you buy a home and it has a palm tree in it. That palm tree belongs to the generations before it. So if you buy that palm tree, it stays with the owners of the house you bought from because it's the freshest commodity. And what they do is they climb to the very, very tip of palm tree on these ladders that you think, why? Why do I want to go up that ladder so high up to this palm? But they have a way of removing the tip or the head of the palm, and they put in, just like with tapping maples, they tap the tip of the head, and they runs for about 6 months, and it's the most delicious honey I've ever had. I brought home like a wine-sized bottle of it, and it was gone within 2 months. And then, when that time is over, they go back and they have a technique to repair the head, that there's no damage to the tree, and then the cycle ends and begins again. And to order, I looked it up, to order a bottle of the honey would have been about $160. So you're like, oh wow, that was good tasting. So it was pretty magical. It was pretty magical. I was actually in the forest, and I told my husband to walk away a little bit. Just walk away. And I wanted to record the silence. And it was like in a fern gully, and the Laura Silver trees were here, and the fern gully was down here. I mean, it was magical. I kept expecting fairies. And I just recorded silence because I never hear silence, ever. You know, so rare. So those are little bits of it. But the thing was, I'm an oil painter primarily, and adding some mixed media in there as well. But I didn't want to risk taking my oil paints on the plane only for them to be confiscated. So I had to, and I also do have acrylics at home, but it was kind of the same thing, that they were going to consider them liquids, right? So, and they're hundreds and hundreds of dollars, all the materials I have in my studio. So I was trying to figure out, what do I want to bring? So I prepared some canvases with mediums, like 12 by 12. I used one suitcase as my carry-on, which had all my art supplies. So I took paintbrushes, and somehow I got scissors on. I don't even know how I did that. I wrapped them really well in like paper toweling and stuff. I don't know how I got on one thing. And so I took all my tools with me. And then I decided, well, what about pan pastels? I used to work with oil pastels. What about pan pastels? And so I brought that and discovered I didn't like them. Just didn't like them. And it was kind of like, oh no, Mr. Boo, what you gotta do here now? There's no art store on the island for whatever. But we managed to find a hardware store that sold just little tiny miniature acrylics, but called tintas. And the only colors they had were red, blue, orange, and green. No white, no black. And so I had to just mix and use whatever material was at hand. And I would often walk the gardens, and anything that was on the ground, to me, was free game. I wouldn't pick anything, but there were so many different plants and cacti and wooden, pieces of wood that would fall off. Everything was so interesting. So I would use those, and I brought a gel plate. That was the one thing, is I brought my gel plate. And so I was able to do layers and layers of paint, and then paint the plants, and put the plants over the layers. And that's where a lot of these prints that you see are from. And then I did the one collage that's in the back, and that's in the suspender frame, and that was a paper collage. Yeah, I did bring, I think I brought some of my paper scrapbookers with me, so that was done on the island. And we had this lovely night where we all critiqued each other's work, and we all presented. And it was just so much fun. My husband is a musician as well. And he wrote, I think, 4 songs while he was there, read numerous books. And so he played guitar for his presentation, and the others, read from her book. Another one, the other artist read a poem. She didn't have her big photographs with her. But so when you do an artist-in-residencies, it's like nothing else. There's no comparison to being alone in your studio. It can be scary. You never know. Didn't know who would speak English, who wouldn't. And we tried to learn Spanish. We took Spanish for like 2 or 3 months. The minute we got off the plane to go to the ferry, nothing. I knew no Spanish. It just disappeared on me. I swear, and same with my husband. It was like the weirdest thing. Every word we learned just went away. So I can't explain it. So we got our messages across. We were able to speak to the locals, and just a lot of pantomiming and a lot of, nodding our heads and pointing. Ceviche. ¿Dónde está la ceviche? The one I did get down was ¿Dónde está el baño? Which is really bathroom.
The most important thing.
Most important. And we had some delicious foods from Fresh Islanders. I had the best calamari I have ever had in my life. I just was like, this is heaven. So it really was a tremendous, and for a month. So it was a really long time. I really got to know the island. And that's what I like to do when I travel, is to know the place I'm staying. I don't like hopping around. I like to go from one location, but I'll stay in that location for a few days and go to another, so that we get to know what's around there and the people who are there too. That's the way I travel with my husband. So that was the residency.
How did you find out about the residency?
There is a listing of residencies online every year on Facebook.
Okay.
And it says online, it just says residencies for the year 24 or residencies for the year 25. And so that's what I looked up. And we had tons of them. There were some really other cool ones.
Okay.
So, but this one, I would say, you have to make sure you're in good health. You have to make sure that you can walk and climb.
Right.
I think there were only 2 hikes that my husband and I were able to do, because the rest of them were like 4 in difficulty, or 5, like mountain climbing. And that was not us. But the walks that we found were still strenuous, but they were gorgeous. So repeats were welcome. We didn't care. It was just so beautiful. And the little villages are so charming. They're all painted colored houses and what have you. We just fell in love with it. We really did. And so that's what I did. And that's how I made the print, was with the native plants and cacti. So the island itself is zoned in 4 regions. Desert, green, as in the park. And there's other places that are green like that too. Mountain and beach. So each part of the island has its own flavor and its own terrain. And that to me was very exciting, because you got to see it all. There was this one day we were driving, and all of a sudden it looked like a tornado coming over this giant cliff. And we pulled over, and you could hear it, but it was clouds. It was actual clouds, but it looked like a tornado just rolling over this mountain. It was so fascinating. We were just like, look at that. So it was clouds. Because I've been in clouds. And, we all have. I mean, we've been in like a mountain area and you're in a cloud, it's kind of moist and damp and what have you. But this one looked like just a giant marshmallow of snow. It was amazing. So that was that. And then, so this piece, that piece, the oil painting, this oil painting, the dough oil painting, this particular little oil painting here, those were all done, the cliffs in La Gomera, those were all done, bird and stone. There's little sheets there if anyone wants to pass it around, so you can ask me anything you want to know about how they're made and techniques. So, because I do a lot of different techniques when I'm home in my studio. And so if anyone has particular questions about how a piece was made, feel free to ask.
I don't know the name of this small square one.
Yes.
Can you describe
Yes.
how that was done?
That was done with a series. I have a big one up in the show right now at Anton Gallery. It's the Michigan Annual 58th year, I don't know. But, and it's like 3 times, thank you. It's 3 times as large as that. And that was the sister piece. Because I wanted to make something a little bit smaller in scale, but still relating to my thoughts. And this is the coral reefs are bleaching too. And meaning that coral reefs are dying. all over the world because of the rise in temperature and acidity of the ocean. And the coral reefs is really what provide life in the ecosystem underwater. There are so many animals, fish, and plants. Corals are living plants. Some can actually walk, believe it or not.
Walk?
And walk, yeah, they can. And I've scuba dived, I'm not scuba, but I've snorkeled in Hawaii and many other places. And they are something. You can't, they're breathtaking. And the idea of them being bleached or turning white, bone white and dying. And then the creatures that live in the fish, the shells, the mollusks, whatever it is, they die too. Because there's nowhere for them to go. So this is happening. They're working on new technologies to try to fix them, to help them, but there's no reason for that. I mean, that's our fault. That's our fault. So that was based on the coral reefs bleaching.
Talk about the water and your planting up the mountain.
Oh, yeah, this is really.
How you got your water?
Yeah, our particular place was not near any city or village of any kind. So we depended on a system where once a month, water would be delivered and each neighbor was designated a day to get your water and put it in your system. So when that day came, the person running the place would go up to this one area and have to channel rocks to have it channeled into the cistern. And that's what they did. So they would channel our allotment of water into that cistern, and they'd go next door, or wherever, because there was nobody next door, but they'd go to another place to channel their portion of water for the month. So showers were quick. It's kind of like you turn on the water, you soap up, turn it off, soap up, turn on the water, and rinse. So it was very quick. You know, and you didn't mind. You just it's the way it is there. And you respect it and you want to maintain it. So you do your share. And yeah, there's definitely a water shortage.
And what happens if you run out during your allotted time?
Well, you don't run out, it just gets cold. It's super cold. Because it's all, the place is all solar. There's no regular electricity. So it's all solar powered. So they ask you to charge your phones during the day and not at night. But we brought with us an but a battery charger so we could charge our phones at night. And then we plug in that during the day to charge it for night. So you kind of have to think of these little things once you find out what's available, what's not available. They tell you, I give you a whole list. And then the person who ran the place also did the grocery shopping, so we would just put in what we wanted and chipped in a bit of money, just a little every week for the groceries. And you could pick mangoes in the garden, and I'm telling you, that's a mango. What we have here is not a mango. They are delicious, but that was like the greatest mangoes I ever had. So, yeah.
About the water that they delivered to different homes, to the cisterns, was it from someplace on the island or was it brought from across on the ferry?
It was probably brought in from the city system.
Across the ferry or
No,
a big pipe?
no, that's a great question,
Oh.
and I'm not quite sure. But there is a city system of water, so they probably plugged into that to fill up the water truck and then diverted it, over to this part of the island.
It would be so interesting if everyone had the experience of living in a place where you had to take care of the water. You had to live in a very careful way.
Right.
And we hear it from you, and it's like, wow, it's a lot to stretch your mind.
Yeah.
Because like here, when the power goes out, you walk into the room and turn on the light switch because you're just used to it being
Right.
immediate. So,
And
wow.
it's the same with the solar.
Mhm.
So we never had any power outage, but there was this one thing that happened. We had a battery outage in our cottage,
Mhm.
and it was like on the side where the cliff is. And so the caretaker came down, my husband went out, and they went and changed this big battery, and it was part of the solar system. And I was scared to death, thinking, hang on, boys!
Don't fall down the cliff.
Don't fall down the cliff!
Oh, gosh.
So, but it was okay, we got it fixed.
Yeah.
And, so, yeah. And the piece over there with the dough, that happened because of the California fires.
Mhm.
And that's what I was thinking about when I was making that particular piece, was how everything, it's called Run, Don't Freeze. Because you know how deer freeze and sheep freeze. And so many animals have gotten killed. Wildlife has gotten killed in these fires as well as the rest of the people in homes and what have you. But there's also the wildlife that is, and the whole ecosystem of the forest has gotten demolished. And yeah.
Talk a little bit about your honeybee.
Oh, maybe. That's called Honeybee Sanctuary. Or honeybee flowers, and something like that. But it's about the honeybees. Honeybees are endangered now because their nests are somehow being destroyed. No one knows why this is happening, but whole hives are being abandoned and they're being decimated. And so I'm like part of the pollination process, meaning I raise black swallowtail butterflies in the summer, and so I like to release those back out into the garden. Some people do bees, I do butterflies. But anything that can help, I try to plant native plants so that anything that can help the pollinators are something that's very, very meaningful to me. So you have to plant native plants and flowers and things like look up what they're attracted to, what colors are they attracted to. And so that was a very meaningful piece to me. And I actually did that in stages. I took a type of a very thick medium and I laid it across the center. And then I took a tool that rolled, and on one side of the roller was just a straight little lines, and the other side of the roller was the bigger lines. So I did that 4 to 5 times across. And once my medium gel dried, and then I painted the colors and went back in and painted the little lines in between the gardens. And afterwards taped all the black, taped all the yellow, painted that, it's all oil paint. And then when it was completely dry, I went back in with an electric sander and sanded the sides of it, which represented the honeybees and the decimation of the honeybees.
Well, I must compliment you on this piece in particular. The composition is outstanding.
Thank you.
And it's not your average interpretation of, honeybees and flowers.
Right.
And it's just, I don't know if that was just, I don't know how that came, but
It just came.
very
It's like-
successful.
This one, in a way, was somewhat planned, but not in other ways. And so I never know what the final
Yeah.
result is gonna be like. Sometimes I have an idea that I know I wanna do this at work.
Now, the cold wax is on the.
Oh, the cold wax is on,
Is on the
on
black
the,
and yellow stripes.
yeah, the black
But
and
not
yellow
on the
is
center
cold
part.
wax, right, but not on
Yeah,
the center. And
Very
cold-
well, really
yeah.
awesome,
Thank you,
really beautiful.
thank you, that was a very
Yeah,
meaningful
I
piece.
wish so, I wish somebody hadn't bought it. I want it.
Thank you.
But I'm happy it's sold.
I'm happy it's so.
I'm happy it's sold.
Yeah. And so, and this piece was made from, at the studio, and if you look closely in it, there are whales, like ghost whales in there, because the whales are also endangered. And so many of the species are endangered right now. So it's a mishmash of the chemicals and the plastics and everything you find in the ocean right now that we're swallowing and dying from, and the chemicals. So that piece I did in the studio when I came back from the trip to Gomera, and that's what this one was about. There's this piece too. It's hard to see in this light. But that one was portraying in a calm way. I wanted it to be a calm picture. But the painting itself was representative, like the ocean is green. It's not your typical color of ocean. And again, it's representing healing the waters and healing ourselves. So in order to heal ourselves, we have to heal the waters. You know, so that was another one that was very meaningful to me. And then I'm happy, even though I was on an island, some of it refers to the Arctic, because that's another thing I'm concerned about is the Antarctic is basically melting. And it just kills me, you know? It's like, 'cause I lived 4 months in Alaska. And I know what glaciers look like. And I hiked on glaciers in Yellowstone and other places. And the beauty of them is astounding, the colors you see in these. And knowing, I was just watching a program on PBS, and it was about the Antarctic, and it was actually killer whales, but this was one segment, but usually when there's ice in the winter, it's all iced up. So the walruses and the seals have places to give birth and to raise their young and what have you, and they're safe. Now they're not there, it's not there anymore. There's chunks, but they're like this big. And they're not connected to anything. And this pod of killer whales, 4 of them, were trying to get this one walrus, and you know, they're big. They're not the most connected, you know. And he had to jump from one iceberg to another iceberg, jump in the water, get out of the water. I mean, this guy was amazing, and he wore out the 4 of them. Because once he's in the water, he can swim fast. And he finally made it to land. But the other one that was out there didn't make it. And then but you also have to think too, well, they have to eat too, because they're not finding food. They're foraging. They're not finding the same food either. And God only knows what low-lying countries are being flooded because of the oceans melting. So when I think about that, I go nuts. So instead of yelling about it, I paint it, you know. And I try to just make people aware of that. You know, give to the causes that are fighting it, because they're getting federal funding withheld. So at least please try and be supportive of all these environmental groups out there that are left hanging. I just read an article today that they've stopped building the barrier in the Great Lakes with the, what are those fish, the flying fish. Oh, yeah.
It's like the Chinese
It's like
flag or something.
whatever they are, and they destroy the ecosystem because they just reproduce and reproduce and reproduce. They eat all the other fish and plant like carp, flying carp. So they stopped working on it because the funds run away. And they're not sure if they're going to get any funding back. They've already spent millions trying to work, working on this. And this is very serious because we don't want those in our Great Lakes. Because once they're in one, they can be in all. And they're actually kind of disgusting. I've seen them up close. And so I feel like that's my purpose as an artist. Ecology, environment, that has really taken hold of me. And it's subtle, but it's there, and that's what I try to get, how I get my message across. And just speaking out, and I've been on NPR and written about in magazines and other places, and that's how I try to get my messaging out. I'm part of the Glow Radio, and they're doing a series where they're really connecting with different communities, Native American communities, and other nonprofits. And it's all about the Great Lakes and keeping the Great Lakes clean. And I'm representing an environmental artist perspective on it. And this is NPR, and I was already interviewed once for this particular show. And so there's a committee now, I'm part of this committee, and so, whatever I can do, like when I hike, I carry a plastic bag with me, and I take the garbage off the beaches and stuff. Because who could leave that there? What is wrong with you people? You're messing up my sideline. Any other questions, or? And that makes for a very short time.
What is next for you? What do you think you'd like to do next?
Oh.
Do you have another residency?
What?
Trip? Do you have another residency in
No, I
mind?
don't have a residency, but I do have a trip planned to Scotland for my stepdaughter's wedding.
Oh, nice.
And anywhere I go, I study it, so that would be really terrific. And then my mom and I are going on what's it called? A barge in France. And so we'll be in all the little villages. And I'm just hoping that, because I read last year that they were going to open them up to shipping canals up to shipping containers.
But they're not.
I know, I don't know how it would work, but I'm hoping that hasn't taken effect yet, because again, I would be very upset with that. And I think it's because of the Panama Canal.
So travel is what you're saying?
What?
Travel is in your
See
future.
what other people are going through too.
Yeah, nice.
In other parts of the
Yeah.
world, what's happening with their economies. It's everywhere right now. But at least some of the countries are still
Well,
trying to work.
I can personally recommend Scotland. My son was married on the Isle of Skye,
Oh, you're kidding.
and it was just magic.
Oh, I have to talk to you.
And yeah,
I need details. On the Isle of what?
the Isle of Skye.
That's where I want to go.
Oh yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But the Scots are they have a really very they're very proactive when it comes to the environment.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. and the Irish women were telling us that they're very active in Ireland as well. I've been to Ireland, and they are active there. And I've been to Scotland before, but it's been so long that I don't remember much. Ireland's Europe.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming. I'm Cheryl, in case you didn't know. I am recording this whole artist talk so that way those that couldn't attend, or if you want to reference to something that maybe was missed, it'll be on Maus Haus Gallery's website probably by early end of next week or end of this week. And I will definitely make sure to give a copy to Steffanie as well. There are cookies and some light refreshments available in the reception hall. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all for attending.